Hi, this is Lindsay Dill. I am a career consultant for the Engineering Career Development Center. And this presentation is all about tips for successful professionalism. This is a pretty generic topic that can be used both in college and also after college. It's really applicable to everything in life. So I'm going to go ahead and start the video with you. Okay, so tips for successful professionalism in college, work, and life. And I'm also going to have a few memes in here just to add a little bit of humor and a little bit of interest. So to begin, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So this is a lot about the tone that we use, both in our verbal and our written communication. So with written correspondence, always begin with a salutation. Remember that the topic with which you are writing might be urgent to you, but be mindful that the person with whom you are writing deserves proper courtesies regardless of how urgent you think it is, and that person will be more likely to respond favorably if you take the time to be polite. So the example that I'm going to use is more related to college and corresponding with your professors. So you can see a couple of different strategies that you could use. This is actually a real life example of a couple of students in a class that I teach on the side. I've had someone send me the message that you see listed there by A. Hey, you got my grade wrong. I was supposed to have a B and you gave me a C. You can see there's a misspelling in there. There's no salutation. There's no indication of the student's class with which they're referring or the section number. There's no explanation for why they think their grade is wrong, nothing like that. Doesn't have a good overall tone. It's not written in a polite manner. It looks like something that the student just reacted. Maybe they panicked when they saw a grade discrepancy. They panicked. Maybe they were sending it from their smartphone and just didn't want to go through the trouble of creating a more well put together response. But you can see B response is just, it's well written. There is a lot of details given. It makes it easy for me as an instructor because I don't have to try to figure out who the student is or what class we're talking about or why they, which assignment they're talking about, anything like that. And it's just got a very to it. So obviously the instructor is going to respond in a much more favorable way to response number B. So that's just something to think about. With verbal correspondence, you're going to mind the same rules that you do with written correspondence. If you're approaching someone, whether it's a professor, roommate, colleague, your boss, if you're in a job or you're about to start a new job, take the time to introduce your topic and thank them for their time. Just remember, whoever that you're speaking with, they have a lot of on their plate as well. So, your issue or your problem or your question is not going to be the only thing that they're dealing with that day. And it's probably not going to be the most important thing that they're dealing with that day. So just kind of keep that in mind and kind of have a little bit of perspective. Okay, so number 2 is don't let your eyes dance around the room and don't interrupt. So I use this example of Taylor and Kanye, which was from quite a few years ago, but I think it's still kind of a funny example of how important it is not to interrupt and what a bad look it is if you do, interrupt or you don't give someone your undivided attention. So being a good listener is maybe one of the most underrated skills in our world of very fast-paced technology and our addiction to screens. I think we're all guilty of having our phone out, on the dinner table, in meetings, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's rude. So just be very mindful of that. If you're having a conversation in the professional realm, look that person in the eye and listen as attentively as if they were the only other person in the room. Your boss is going to expect you to do this. Your boss most likely is not going to be okay with you having your phone out, having your screen out, and only listening to them partially. They're going to expect your undivided attention. Also, speaking in turn is very important. I think that we all have a friend or know someone who has a tendency to interrupt when you're talking or when someone else is talking. A lot of times people do this to show interest or because they just have an interesting thought that comes to their mind and they feel like they need to share it right away. But this can sometimes be frustrating. It can really cause you to be less efficient if this is happening in a meeting and someone's trying to relay a concept or a thought and they're being interrupted. It can really hinder efficiency. Likewise, for someone to be disengaged and maybe to be looking around the room or looking at their phone, something like that, that's also going to be very distracting and it's not going to be giving proper courtesies. If you do have a thought that pops up while someone else is talking, make a mental note, or if you have paper available to you, make a written note, and then you can share your comment once that person has finished talking. Okay, spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization. I feel like as we progress as a society and we use smart devices more and communication becomes a lot less formal, a lot more frequent, we do have a tendency to leave out proper spelling, grammar, punctuation, and capitalization. This is going to be very important in the workforce, though. It's going to be expected. So one of the common mistakes that I see is using like a lowercase I as a personal pronoun or just a total lack of punctuation. It's okay if you're on Snapchat or you're texting with a close friend, but it's not okay for anything that you would be sending to your boss or to your professor or anything professionally. If you're not great, if like I know that I'm not a great speller, so I utilize technology to help me correct my spelling. There's also technology out there for grammar and punctuation, so utilize those services as well if you need them. Number 4, this is probably one of my favorites. It's just in general, find ways to make your boss's job easier. So at the end of the day, most supervisors simply want their employees to add value and to make their lives easier. Find out the best practices for whatever job you're doing, even if it's a part-time job. If you're a college student right now that is serving tables at a restaurant, or you're lifeguarding, or you're babysitting, figure out how you can add the most value to that position. It's really going to pay off for you, even if you feel like it's not relevant to engineering, or you feel like it's that you're not really developing skills that would be able to translate. I can guarantee you it will pay off for you. If you end up with a free couple of hours at the end of your day, ask for more work. I can tell you this goes a long way. I've had student workers in the past who have, utilized free time just to get on Facebook or work on schoolwork. And then I've had others who have come to me and said, hey, I noticed that the file cabinet needs to be organized. I've got some time. Do you mind if I do that? Those are going to be the student workers with whom I recommend for scholarships and grants and future employment positions, things like that, because I really respect them for doing that. Lighten up the load of those around you as well. So don't ask for someone to give you specific tasks. Be a critical thinker within, whatever you're in. Like I said, even if it's a babysitting position or a serving position, because if you look for ways to improve a process and really improve something within your organization, your boss could take note of that and promote you or give you a raise, or they could serve as a really great reference for you for an actual engineering position down the road. You just never know. Assess the situations that you're given, take the appropriate action. Just remember that managing you is probably not your boss's only job. It's probably only a small portion of his or her job. So take care of your job in a way that your boss really even has to think about you. They just know, if I give John or Sally this task, he or she is going to take care of it, and I don't have to worry about it. You know, I can kind of check that off my list as their manager. The less they have to think about you and micromanage you, the better. If you have a problem, make sure you do your diligent research before approaching your boss. Come up with a few solutions. They're going to really appreciate that extra legwork on your part. Like I said, your boss is, you know, probably got a lot of other things on his or her plate. And so if you come to him or her every single time you encounter an issue, that's going to be very time consuming. And again, another loss of efficiency. So just make sure that you do your due diligence and say, hey, I encountered this problem. I've worked to find a few solutions for it. This is what I have, you know, what do you think? And then they're really going to appreciate that extra legwork. So stay humble. I think, you know, this applies to everyone, but it's especially important for new grads entering the workplace. In the field of engineering, salaries tend to be higher than they are for students that are graduating from other colleges, which is a good thing. But some students have a false sense of hope regarding their starting salary. Just do your research, have some benchmarks, know what you're worth. Don't be insulted if you don't start out at what you're expecting to start out at or what you've heard a friend is going to start out at. Also remember that you have to earn your worth at that company. You know, you've worked really hard up until this point on your GPA and your extracurriculars, your leadership while in college. But once you start in that full-time job within that company, that is kind of a blank slate for you, and all of your past accomplishments really are not going to matter. That's not going to earn the respect of your colleagues and your boss. You really have to start earning that when you begin work. So I think that's just something really important to consider. Even, you know, in the field of engineering, you might be coming in as a project manager, and, you know, you might have a much higher level of education than a lot of your coworkers. However, you know, some of these coworkers might have been in the industry for 30 years already. And so they might have a lot of wisdom that they could offer you. And again, they're going to be very well respected within the organization for the amount of years that they've put in. So just keep that in mind, even if you feel like, you know, even if you're their supervisor and you're coming in with a higher level of knowledge and expertise, you still kind of have to earn that respect. Know what you don't know and ask questions. I think this is a really hard one a lot of times for students too, because you want to seem very competent. You want to seem very knowledgeable coming in to make a good first impression. But I think it's much better to ask those questions in the beginning rather than to make a mistake. However, I would recommend when you ask questions that you jot those answers down, figure out a way to keep those answers organized so that you don't have to ask the same question multiple times. Soft skills are the bee's knees. So most job descriptions and most recruiters are going to strongly value a high level of critical thinking, problem solving, and interpersonal skills. And there's more soft skills than that, of course, but those are the three main ones that we see pop up on job descriptions. So, you know, the technical skills that you're learning are important, the ones that you're learning in school, and also if you're in a part-time job or you're about to start a full-time job, but they could quite possibly be obsolete in just a couple of years. I mean, our technology is changing so fast. So rather than putting an emphasis on that, employers tend to put an emphasis on the things that they can't train you on that are never going to go out of style. And those things are interpersonal communication skills and critical thinking and problem solving skills. So a few communication tips: learn how to properly communicate and learn how to effectively work with people that are different than you. In our global economy that we're in today, it's very likely that you're going to be working with people that speak a different language, come from a different background, a different culture. They might be on the other side of the world, and you might just be communicating virtually. So make sure that you're able and that you're getting that experience. So maybe join a student org that has, a large, diverse group mix of people, so that you can get that practice in on working with people that are different than you. Always prepare for meetings before you enter into them. So I think it's very important to do your research on the topic and the persons with whom you're meeting. It's always very obvious if a person enters into a meeting and they're completely winging it, and you know that they haven't done any work ahead of time to prepare for it, as opposed to someone that is very well prepared and comes in with educated questions on the front end. It's going to make you a lot more confident. It's going to make the ease of the meeting much better. And it's going to be a much more organic flow than if you come in completely clueless about the meeting. Number 7, it's better to undercommit than to overcommit. And I think this is particularly a really hard concept for engineering students who, for most of you guys in high school, you were very high achievers. You set a very high bar in terms of your involvement and your extracurriculars. However, if you're in too many student orgs or professional societies, you're probably not contributing anything to any of them. You're probably just showing up to meetings. You're not really taking on a leadership role. You're not really adding any value. And those are the types of things that employers look for. They don't look for involvement just for the sake of involvement, just for the sake of having something on your resume. They want to hear from you about some actual scenarios of problems that you encountered and how you dealt with those problems and how you dealt with the people within your organization, how you manage people. So it's much better to be in just only 1 or 2 student orgs or professional societies and hold an officer position within those and just give all of those your undivided attention rather than to spread yourself out too thin. When you accept a job as a volunteer, an employee, a member, officer, anything like that, just keep in mind that you aren't just a warm body. Someone is expecting something of you. And if you don't deliver on that, it could really negatively impact your reputation, which could really haunt you down the road. If you do find yourself overcommitted, don't beat yourself up over it. I don't think I know a single person who hasn't found themselves overcommitted at some point in their lives. So that doesn't make you a bad person. That just means that you're figuring things out and you might need to take a step back. I would do that on the front end. I would do it as quickly as possible, as quickly as you realize that you are in over your head. Go ahead and opt out and go to the president of that org or volunteer organization, nonprofit, whatever it is, and just say, look, I know that I thought that I had time for this. This organization is close to me, close to my heart, but I am overcommitted. And I want to vacate this spot for someone else that will have the time to commit to it. You end on good terms, your reputation is not harmed, and it'll relieve a huge burden off of you. Okay, number 8 is to create something new. This was a piece of advice that was given to me in my very first job out of college, and it really just stuck with me. To stand out as an employee, add value to the position in a way that's never been done before. It could be improving a process, it could be adding a new initiative, or it could be expanding on what is currently being done, but just find a way that you can add value. Giving yourself this goal is particularly helpful if maybe you're in a job, maybe you aren't in your engineering job yet, maybe you're in a part-time role in college just to earn some extra money, and maybe it's very monotonous, and maybe you're not that motivated by the actual work. Keeping this goal to add some type of value and to leave that position better than how it was when you found it and when you entered into it can really help you stay motivated. There's always going to be room for improvement, and don't sell yourself short. I mean, you could have a really great idea that would, completely change a process of an organization. I hear this a lot with, in particular, co-op students who, in their co-op, they would go in, they would be a fresh set of eyes within this business, and they would say, hey, look, I think we could improve this process by doing this, this, and this. the company loves it and they end up incorporating that new process to all of their branches across the country, it makes a great impression. And hey, you did something really special as a student. So never sell yourself short and your ideas short. Number 9, ask for feedback, but be ready for it. So whatever job you're in, I would recommend seeking feedback at the conclusion, or even better, the midway point. Even better than that would be frequent, at maybe every month or every other month intervals. Once you're in your full-time job after graduation, this is most likely going to come in the form of an annual evaluation, and most companies and organizations do those. Other times, outside of that annual, just once a year review, you might actually have to initiate it and go to your boss and say, hey, I would really like, make sure that we're on the same page, make sure that you're happy with my work, make sure there's nothing else that I can be doing. This also applies particularly if you're an officer in a student organization. I always recommend sending an anonymous survey, which is really easy to do. You can do that through Qualtrics. And just ask, if your members are happy with the meeting times, or they're happy with the scope of the organization. Do they feel like their skills are being optimized? Or if you've got people that are really good at marketing, are they able to use those skills, or do they feel like they're not able to use the skills that they're really good at? And also, do they feel like they have a voice? Do they feel like there's only a few members that are making all the decisions for the entire organization? Or do they feel like you actually value what they have to say and that they have a platform to do that? I think it's important when doing this to remember that it's likely that you will not receive 100% good feedback in any situation, whether it's a student org, whether it's your job, whatever it might be. There's always going to be people that either aren't pleased with you or feel like that you could improve in some areas. And the truth is, we could all improve in some areas. So I wouldn't take that personal. I would just be ready for it, and just know that the reason that you're doing it is to get an overall sense. If it's a student org, you want to know what the pulse of the organization is. And if it's your full-time job, you just want to know where you stand within the organization and what you can do to possibly get to the next level. Lastly, stay classy. College is the time to be young and have fun, but it's also very important to make good choices. Consider the decisions that you're making with alcohol. If you're invited to an interview where alcohol is served, limit yourself to only one drink if you're 21, or better yet, just abstain completely, and certainly do so if you're under 21. These situations with alcohol at interviews are not a trap, but employers will definitely take note. We've heard from them that they watch and observe how candidates are acting when alcohol is around. So just keep that in mind. Drug testing is also a real thing. So especially in the field of engineering, when we have a lot of students going into government and federal type positions, that is something that is very real. And we have unfortunately had students who've had offers revoked because of a failed drug test. Also, make sure that you have a clean social media presence. Most employers are going to check your social media. Don't rely on your permissions that you have set because those are not foolproof. The best motto is, if a picture doesn't represent you well, just don't post it. Also think about your personal appearance. You never know where you could make a connection with someone down the road that it can help you. So, it could be in a restaurant, it could be in an airport, in a restroom. It really could be anywhere. It could be at a concert, so just, you don't have to be business casual everywhere you go and on everywhere you go, but just make sure that you've got, you're projecting the kind of image that if you are in the right place at the right time, that you're not going to sabotage yourself. So that's the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you for watching. Just as a reminder, we are located in 2004 HM Comer, and then we can also be contacted via handshake. Right now we're doing Zoom appointments until we're all back on campus. When we reopen as a university, we will be back in our office in 2004 HM Comer, and we are happy to help with any questions that you have. Thank you and have a great day.